So today I want to share with you my personal technique for how I store drawn wax frames right from the bee colony. This could be maybe you've got a deep box like this one that's sitting here, a brood box that came off of a colony that just collapsed, and now you need to save this until the next time you're ready for it. It could be that you've just harvested honey from a colony and at the end of the fall season need to somehow store that honey super so that we can put it back on the colony next year and give those bees a jump start into next year's honey harvest. In both cases, I follow the same technique. Whenever I have a box come off of a colony that I'm done with for a while, I will take that box and put it inside of a heavy duty 55-gallon trash bag. I like to go for the ones that are about 2 mil or thicker. Generally, the heavy duty or the contractor style bags will get you that thickness there. That prevents the corners of the boxes from poking through the bag and creating holes in your protective barrier. Once they're in the bag, then I'll take them and I'll put them into a deep freezer. I've got a couple here in this deep freezer. They're actually sitting next to some string cheese and some battered fish nuggets at the moment, as it were. I've got 7 supers in this deep freezer. This deep freezer today is about 1 degree Fahrenheit. It usually fluctuates between 0 and 1 degrees. And then I'll write myself a note on the wall to remind me of when I put the supers in the freezer. I like to leave the supers in the freezer for at least 7 days at or as close as I can get to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. What I've seen in the past, in my own personal experience, if I put a box of frames in the freezer rather, for less than a week, it seems to cause wax moths, larvae, other bugs and pests that might be in the frames to either go into a suspended animation or a brief hibernation phase, and then they seem to snap back out of it if you pull the supers from the freezer too early. And then of course they have free range access to chew on and destroy your wax during the off season, which is what we're looking to avoid. So I leave my frames in the freezer for at least a week at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, longer if I have freezer space. Sometimes I've left them in there for up to 6 months, pulled them out, allowed them to defrost naturally here in the workshop, and then go ahead and put them on the colony. The bees use them. The wax, if allowed to defrost, does not break. It's not brittle. It comes right back and is pliable, and the bees can work it like normal. So once the supers have been in there for at least a week, I'll pull them out, and then I'll end up stacking them in the corner of the workshop. I've got a bit of a stack going on here so far. These are my stack of supers that I've pulled off from a recent fall harvest and I'm done with for the year. What is new for me this year, I'm trying this out, is to take a piece of 1/8-inch thick material, plywood-like material, cut these down from 4x8 sheets to where they're just about 3/4 inch or 1 inch wider all the way around, then the super itself. Concept for me here is that when I pull these out and stack these up to put a 1/8-inch thick board in between each of the boxes, one above and one below. And I go back over here to the stack, you can see them here. They're all stacked up this way, and this stack is ready for another super and another board on top. Concept for me here is if something gets into the workshop and enters into one of the bags of the supers, I don't want it to have access to the rest of the stack of supers all the way up and all the way down. So by putting this board in between each of the boxes, should one of the boxes be compromised, it should help prevent the other boxes from being compromised as well. So that's it. That's my technique. Tip for you. If you like to use moth crystals with as part of your super protection plan, make sure you're using actual moth crystals that'll have the paradichlorobenzene listed as the primary ingredient. Don't use moth balls. The mothball chemical will seep into your wax and create residual chemical traces, whereas the moth crystals don't. They don't leave those same trace amounts in there. I have used moth crystals for many years. I've stopped over time, though, because the moth crystals will permeate the plastic bags that my supers are in. Even though the bags have been vacuum sealed shut and tied into a knot, the moth crystals will permeate that plastic bag and escape. And if I go back to my freezer here, look at what's next door to that plastic bag is all my food. And so one year, went to put a set of supers away for the winter, gave it some moth crystals, bagged them up, put them in the deep freezer, came back a week later, had to throw away all the food in the freezer because the moth crystals had left the super bag and had permeated through the food bags that were in there, and everything tasted like moth crystals, so we had to throw it out. So I don't use moth crystals anymore. If you use moth crystals, save them until the supers come back out of the freezer and you've got them on a stack. I don't use them after they come back out of the freezer any longer either, because the moth crystals will continue to off gas and permeate right through the bags, and then my entire workshop and my entire basement smelled like moth crystals. And the family shared with me they got tired of smelling moth crystals, so I just don't use them any longer. I've had pretty good luck with a minimum of 10-day deep freeze at 0 degree Fahrenheit. Pull them out, stack them up in the corner of the workshop, put this board in between each of the boxes. They'll sit this way all winter long, and into next spring I will pull apart a box, take one off of the stack, take it out of the bag, and put it right on the colony, and the bees love it. They've got fully drawn frames they can just take off and go. If you are using moth crystals when you're ready in the springtime to use your supers again, just open them up, let them sit either in your workshop, in your garage, outside. Let them sit for about 24 hours to finish off gassing before you put that box of frames back onto your colony. That way you're sure all of the residual moth crystal fumes are completely gone. So that's it. That's my technique. That's how I preserve and safeguard my boxes of wax frames each year. If you've got a different process, or if you see something that I could do differently that's more efficient, please drop it into the comments. I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, thank you for watching.